Good afternoon. We'll begin the Capital Program Oversight Committee meeting. Don, do we have any speakers, public speakers?
We have two public speakers. The first is Kevin Zing.
Kevin Zing.
Hello, good afternoon to Joe Loda and Ronnie Hakem. My name is Kevin Zhang. I would like to request that the MTA Church Avenue renovation station on the Brighton line, enhance station alternative, install elevators on the 4th Avenue line, and install heat on all subway stations, including underground and above ground stations, because Church Avenue station has old subway growth ramp entrances, crumbling infrastructure, sealing platform edges, difficulty navigating virus levels, and staircases, numerous leaks, and poor drainage, poor lighting, damaged tiles, inaudible properly address system, peeling paint, general shabby and unpleasant parents, enhanced station alternative for Prospect Avenue, 53rd Street, and Beveridge Avenue on the 4th Avenue line don't have elevators. Some heat for above ground stations is not working, and most heat for underground stations don't have. When I got sick during the cold weather, Church Avenue station on the Brighton line needs to be renovated and install elevators in both directions. Enhanced station alternative for Prospect Avenue, 53rd Street, and Beveridge Avenue on the 4th Avenue line needs to install elevators in both directions. All subway station needs to install heat for underground and above ground stations, and some heat for above ground stations need to be renovated the heat stations. Thank you and have a nice day.
The next speaker is Murray Bowden.
I've already described why positive train control should not be funded any further. I do have a comment on capital. In the Metro North meeting this morning, they described grinding the wheels with flats on them, and they wanted to buy another machine so that they could do more cars every day, working 7 days a week, 3 days. There is another solution that's much cheaper, much faster, and will accommodate many, many more cars. I get a flat tire on my car, I change it, I put another tire on. Why don't you have 25 extra wheels in Wassaic with a forklift truck, lift the train up, and on Saturday when nobody is around, just change the wheel. Why do you have to grind the wheels while they're still on the train? Nobody ever said that. They just keep doing it, and you're going to buy another train grinding wheel and use it for 3 months, 2 months, 10 months it sits idle. For 10 months with no overtime, you could grind a couple hundred extra wheels, and in 6 or 8 different places, you could change the wheels. And we never thought of that. We always do it the old way. The same way you don't change tires on the trains, you're still using PTC. My kids can tell exactly where my grandchildren are every minute of the day. You can tell where every train is and how fast it's going every minute of the day. This is only my second retirement. The first is I'm back because of Jim Simpson. He got me back in. I was really gone the first time. Jim said, "How come you not come to the meeting tomorrow?" I was at the meeting tomorrow, and I've been here ever since.
Thank you, Jim. Okay. Before we start the meeting, I'd like to say a few words about Mike Wetherell. And it's actually a fond farewell to Mike, who's retiring as MTA's Director for the Office of Construction Oversight. At OCC, Mike has been responsible for the oversight of many of the major projects in the MTA's multi-billion-dollar capital program, as well as the management of the construction mentoring portion of the Small Business Development Program. Mike has more than 30 years of transit management experience, including in addition to his work here at the headquarters, engineering and project management roles at the Long Island Railroad, as well as New York City's transit, including the private sector. He is a graduate of the Naval Academy at Annapolis. He has also served in advisory roles regarding passenger rail safety at the national level. Beyond his credentials, Mike has been a wonderful colleague to all of us here at the MTA family. He's a true professional, always taking his work very seriously. We will miss him greatly, and we wish him all good things as he moves on to new challenges. Mike, thank you very, very much. Okay, now the approval of the minutes from the January 22nd meeting. I'll move them. Do I have a second? Any questions, comments, edits? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? They carry. The committee work plan. Don, do we have any?
No changes this month.
Okay, no changes this month. Now to presentations. Long Island Railroad and Metro North positive train control update. Before we do that, can I ask, who was not here for your presentation at the Railroad Committee? Okay, Carl. Carl and Peter. Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Good afternoon. The railroads have a very aggressive project schedule. However, we remain on target to have all of our lines in PTC operations by the end of the year. Collectively, percent complete is roughly 62%. The project budget remains at $968 million. However, Long Island Railroad estimates that they need an additional $40 million to complete their project. This slide, the last time we met in October, it was apparent that we had not done a good job conveying the fact that we already have PTC system in place that currently meets some of the FRA mandates for PTC implementation. We have the way Metro North and Long Island are deploying their PTC system, it's an overlay system. We're implementing the advanced civil speed enforcement system, which is found on other Northeast Corridor railroads, on top of our existing signaling system. And this table conveys that information based on the yellow and the green check marks. The left-hand column shows the 5 PTC goals and identifies what PTC is designed to prevent. So as far as preventing train-to-train collisions, both Long Island and Metro North have existing PTC systems that automatically prevent red signal violations for train speeds over 15 miles an hour. With full PTC, a train will have a positive stop at red signals regardless of speed. This will prevent all head-on and sideswipe collisions. A consequence of the accident at Spine Dival, Metro North and Long Island went back and looked at their signaling system a couple of years ago. And currently, Metro North and Long Island both prevent overspeed derailment of permanent speed restrictions utilizing different methods. Long Island Railroad updated their cab signaling systems and implemented various modifications to prevent a train from reaching overturn speed on any curve under normal operating conditions. Metro North has advanced the use of their PTC transponders to implement civil speed enforcement, and will have civil speed enforcement implemented system-wide as early as first quarter of this year. With full PTC, both railroads will not only limit train speeds for permanent speed restrictions, but will also be able to do it for temporary speed restrictions when there is a anomaly on the railroad, such as a broken rail. They'll have to have the completion of their office subsystem in order to have that capability. For incursions into work zones, Metro North already meets the PTC mandate with their enhanced employee protection system. This has already been approved by the FRA. Long Island Railroad has track blocking, which allows a dispatcher to prevent routes into a work zone. Long Island Railroad, as part of this current contract, will also be implementing an ancillary roadway worker protection system. This new system will prevent anyone other than the roadway worker in charge from removing the work zone protection, which is a much safer system than we have today. For both railroads, existing PTC limits train speeds to 15 miles an hour if the switch is not properly aligned. Full PTC will prevent movement over misaligned switches. And protection at malfunctioning grade crossings are currently protected by operating rules and manual procedures. With full PTC deployment, PTC will allow a dispatcher the ability to place a special temporary speed restriction that will stop trains before the affected grade crossing. However, the notification of the failure of a grade crossing is still a manual process, and someone will still have to report it, and it will not likely automatically stop a train knowing that there's a train on the tracks, car on the tracks. At the last board meeting, there was also a request to provide a simple dashboard to give everyone an idea of how the railroads are doing to meet compliance at the end of 2018 and also get the project completed. So the four left-hand circles on the diagram that you're looking at identify the 4 criteria to be in compliance at the end of 2018. The first one is the acquisition of radio spectrum, which both railroads currently have. The second is the installation of hardware, and both railroads are roughly at the high 70% mark. The third is the training, and we're clearly on our way to meeting our goal and completing that before the end of 2018. The fourth circle is probably the most challenging. It's the criteria to have one of our subdivisions in revenue service demonstration. And what this means for the railroads is we each have pilot lines that have been approved as part of our implementation plan, and we need to be able to show that our system has been fully tested and is safe enough for the FRA to approve and allow passengers to ride on those trains. And if you look at it, the criteria to meet the RSD for the pilot lines is broken out into having all our hardware installed, which both railroads have their pilot equipment installed. It's having the site performance testing and the data to support that completed, which we've started already. It's part of it is the application to the FRA to get our revenue service demonstration application approved. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on what that entails. And then it's the actual approval. So both railroads already started working on our application. And so those 4 criteria is what we need to be in compliance.
Can I just ask, I assume when you say Metro North, you're referring to east of Hudson only?
Yes, that's correct. And I'll get into a little more detail on that.
Thank you.
The fifth circle is what we need to complete the project. And each one of those tick marks indicates a non-pilot segment that's part of each railroad's implementation plan. Long Island Railroad has 15 additional line segments, and Metro North has 11. And each one of those tick marks is equivalent to one of the circles on the left of the fifth circle. The next 3 slides is our way of trying to convey to you the progress of the railroads have made in the way of hardware installations. Since we're all in the home stretch right now, what we've tried to do is consolidate all the information on these few slides. The left-hand column shows the various elements of the PTC system. The system requirements are the installations required by the contract, not necessarily what's required for the FRA mandate, and that's shown in the column indicated in gold. These are the numbers to meet the PTC implementation plan, and at the recommendation of the FRA, both Long Island Railroad and Metro North have submitted revised goals for the hardware. And as you can see, the numbers for the wayside elements are the same as what's required by contract. However, the numbers required for the trains are less because in order to run operations, you only need the front and back end of the trains to be equipped, and so therefore you don't have to equip all of them to meet the mandate. The percent complete column shows what we've done so far through the end of January. And the remaining goals is what we've shown here is the projection to meet the completion of the contract. So the green highlighted boxes indicate the month in which we would meet the FRA goals, and the numbers that are shown on the projections are to meet the contract goals. And as you can see on Long Island, we have a couple of things that are outliers until like November, December. Those are actually for work that's being done on the east side access tunnels, which is not required for compliance. But you can also see that the Long Island Railroad has met their goals for the M7 installations. On the next slide, similarly, Metro North also, the information is also indicated in the same way. And as you can see, they've already met their goals for the M7 installations as well. This is they've shown their hardware projections in 2 slides. The first one is for east of Hudson, and on slide 6 is the installations for west of Hudson on the Port Jervis line. And the important thing to note here is that the Metro North installation numbers are dependent on New Jersey Transit. New Jersey Transit is responsible for the design and the equipment to provide to Metro North so that they can install it.
I'd like to add to that that's the portion that Metro North has responsibility for. The Pascack Valley line is totally in the control of New Jersey Transit, so we're not neglecting a line. It's just not within our bailiwick at the moment.
Thank you. Since we last reported in October, there were several project milestones that we had discussed, and the project team was working hard to achieve. The final design review milestone should have been completed at the end of last year, but has been pushed into March. The delay in this milestone is somewhat less concerning than last year, as the team has done more testing and does not foresee any major system or hardware changes. The team has also reviewed and approved most of the documents that have potential to impact software development and prioritized the necessary documents required for the FDR milestone. So, for instance, some of the documents that are related to training and maintenance have been deferred and are not directly tied to the design. Both railroads started their office FAT and have consequently also completed it in early February. To help mitigate some of the schedule delays, the focus initially was on testing the core PTC functionality. The testing teams also allotted an additional week to complete all of the testing for the non-core functions to identify all test variances before advancing to the next phase. The success rate for the non-core functions did not meet the entrance criteria for the start of integrated system FAT. For Long Island, we had a success rate of roughly 82%, and Metro North had a success rate of roughly 68%. Based on that, the railroads and the contractor sat down and reevaluated the risk to move forward and made a joint decision that we needed to move forward with open test variances. So what I'll talk a little bit more about some of the mitigation strategies, but additional testing for all the subsystems remain to be scheduled, and the plan is to correct all of these test variants before we exit out of site performance testing on the pilot lines. Another important activity that was raised by the IEC in their last report is the verification and validation of the PTC Vital database. And happy to report that this particular activity is moving forward. The contractor completed the work for the pilot lines in order for us to be able to start our pilot testing in the field. They've added more resources to this activity. They've also been able to validate the process and how they do perform that for the non-pilot lines. So we don't anticipate any issues with completing this task before May in advance of field testing. Like we had reported, we continue with deliveries and installations. We're also continuing our efforts with training No anticipated delays in completing that before the end of 2018. And the other good news is we have started field testing. Preliminary field testing on our pilot lines for Long Island on the Port Washington line and Metro North on their test track we've been able to demonstrate certain PTC functionality, which have given us some confidence in the certain elements of the system design. We've been able to demonstrate the ability to send a temporary speed restriction list to the train and have that particular speed enforced. Also been able to demonstrate positive train stop, accurate stop and turn back functionality. So that's good news for us. Okay, this diagram was also a request by the board to provide more details about the software and system development. A little complicated, but what we try to do here is convey in a simple manner the complexity of the situation that we're in regards to the development of the office software and subsystem FATs. The top line shows the consolidated subsystem FATs for the elements of the wayside interface units, the transponders, the communications manager, and the onboard computer software. That effort, like I had reported earlier, is on its way. We've accomplished enough to proceed with pilot testing. We still have some work to do as far as closing out variances, so this is why you see two diamonds there. So the first diamond, we've already passed that. We're working on correcting those variances so that by the time May comes, we have those corrections incorporated. The second line is the office software, which I reported. We just completed the factory acceptance testing. We'll continue to try to fix all of the variances that we've collected and also give a little bit more time to the contractor to develop the functionality for some of the other functions such as interoperability, roadway worker protection system for Long Island Railroad, and the target is to have that also completed in the May timeframe. We started the integrated system FAT, and we slated to finish that sometime in, the March-April time period. We will correct variances and try to get a new baseline software release sometime in the May-June time period. As far as pilot testing, we're using, like I had said, a preliminary version of the software we already have to try to advance the identification of any kind of other test cases, test variances that we may only see in the field. We will start site performance testing. We will go through what we call a site update period, and this is the period when you monitor and verify the performance of the PTC system. We have to fix, the plan is to fix all test variances that we uncovered during this period before we start the site integrated system test, the SIST period, and that's at the time when we would have the integrated software for all of the various elements. We will, at that point, at the completion of the SIST period, we would have collected enough data to support our application to the FRA. We have allotted a 2-month period for the FRA to review our application. Of course, you know, there'll be a lot of other railroads submitting their RSD applications at the same time. So this is a pretty aggressive, and this is an assumption on our part. In verbal conversations with the FRA, they've committed to try to meet this commitment and approve our application within 2 months. And then once we're in our RSD for the pilots, the concept is that most of the functionality issues that would have been uncovered during this period would be account for all of the issues that we would find for the non-pilot. So when we get into the non-pilot testing, we will, request from the FRA an extended RSD for the non-pilot lines. And, during that particular period for the non-pilot lines, we anticipate only uncovering issues that might be site-specific or unique to those actual lines. The next slides provide a little bit more detail into the field testing, the approach that the railroads are taking to place all the lines into PTC operations by the end of the year. And while the railroads are waiting for the approval of their RSD application shown in red, we'll start the site performance testing for some of the non-pilot lines. So in the case of Long Island Railroad, we will plan to test 3 simultaneous lines and ramp up to as many as 6. And this, of course, will take a lot of locomotive engineers and signal engineers to support that effort. The assumption, like I had said, is that most of the software bugs that were found during pilot testing would be corrected and that only site-specific issues would be uncovered during this period. Metro North has a similar plan. They have only 1 pilot line, and they were able to consolidate some of their line segments into one to make their testing more efficient. But the same, premise goes for them as well, as far as the vetting out most of their issues during pilot, which is why the time frame for the non-pilot lines are a much more reduced amount of time than what was required for pilot. And here you'll note that the Waterbury line is not part of that plan. The Metro North has an approved implementation plan from the FRA to have that line that gives them more time until 2020 to deploy PTC. The next 3 slides identify the project risks and some of the railroad mitigations. And like I had said to the committee earlier in the day, this is really an aggressive project. We, on probably a weekly, daily basis, are looking at our risks and trying to mitigate schedule delays, taking on more technical risks just to make the date. And we are working as hard as we can to make sure that we deliver and complete the project on time. So one of the major risks is advancing the integrated system FAT and field testing with open test variances from the subsystem FATs. With the looming deadline, the railroads need to move forward and to advance to the next phase of testing, which is contrary to a normal systems engineering process. The railroads feel that there's still a benefit in proceeding so as not to delay the identification of any potential design or operational issues. However, with this approach, we need to do a better job in managing risks, minimizing it as much as we can, and instituting several mitigation measures. So as part of that, as I had mentioned earlier, the railroads are focusing on testing functions required to meet the FRA mandated PTC goals. There are many functions and features of the system that are required under the contract, but we will focus on those that are necessary to meet the mandate. We're also looking to maximize our test environment in Pittsburgh. Currently, Metro North and Long Island both have test labs, and we're looking to work with the contractor to see if there's any way that we can, change the lab setup in order to correct test variants, as we're also continuing our integrated system test, because the office and the integrated system factory acceptance tests are mutually exclusive based on the way the current test environment is set up. We're trying to expedite the delivery of our test labs to New York to support testing. Normally, the test lab is delivered as a contractual obligation at the end, so that the railroads can use that for operations. But we're trying to get that delivered to New York sooner. We're also the contractor, as part of their mitigation measures, is providing a cloud-based solution for real-time access to their requirements traceability matrix tool, which will allow real-time verification and validation of the testing that's going on. They're also looking to implement shadow mode testing to collect operational field data in order to support and accelerate the SIST test period, and to also get an advanced view of the system as far as system performance. And then for Long Island Railroad, to kind of alleviate some of the concerns of having that development lag the office development, we have been able to test this in the integrated lab to basically validate the feasibility of the system that's been feasibility of the function in advance. So we're able to send a TSR request from a mobile device to the PTC safety server over a Wi-Fi connection in the lab, and we're able to prove that out. So in concept it works, but we just still need to complete the development of that function. Another major risk is systems integration, and there are some issues that we can identify in the factory, and we've already found some and been able to rectify them, but many are most likely will be reviewed when we actually start field testing. So our biggest area of concern right now is the radio communications between the train and the wayside. And in order to mitigate these concerns, we're in the process of procuring additional radio spectrum to minimize potential interference issues. We also have the contractor utilizing a trunk train to mimic train communications with the wayside to speed up discovery of wayside communication issues without having to utilize a real train. Another risk, and you've heard this before, and it's probably something that's pretty widespread across the industry, is the system integrator's ability to acquire and retain PTC knowledgeable resources to actually support the project to completion. The railroads are still not satisfied with the level of staffing from the systems integrator, and although they've added staff in certain areas, they continue to lose staff in others. So what they've done is they've acquired outside support for some of the key areas, such as design, testing, and requirements work. But of course, it takes time for these resources to gain the project experience, and in most cases, the SI continues to miss interim and major milestones on the project. So the other thing the railroads are doing is trying to supplement some of the gaps in their technical expertise. So where we have signaling expertise on our staff, we've been working closely hand in hand with them to resolve technical issues, offering the services of our consultants, and also we're looking also to hire people who are knowledgeable about our operations, as far as like maybe hiring retirees who have knowledge and able to support some of the field testing. I mean, we are definitely using our internal workforce to do a lot of that, but unfortunately, you can see based on the schedule and having to test multiple lines, we don't really have the bandwidth, and we're trying to get as many people on board as we can to make sure that we deliver. Another risk which has been elevated recently to the executive management of both organizations, the finalization of agreements with Amtrak for interoperability design and implementation. Letters of understanding have been shared and are being reviewed, and we're working close to make sure that we're in full agreement with what that interface looks like, because any change will put the project at risk. We also, in parallel, the railroads are also looking to have Amtrak's PTZ vendor review some of our critical interface documents directly to ensure the technical agreements are still valid. And the next one, like I had discussed, is the timely approvals by the FRA for certain work which requires their approval. And as I had said, I made many assumptions in our project schedule as far as the timeline that they would be able to commit to. Verbally they agree to it. However, it really depends on, I guess, the volume of work that they have and their ability to field responses from multiple railroads at the same time under the strict deadline. So recently, one of the good things is that the FRA had provided informal guidance to us as far as what's required in our RSD application. Having better definition on what they expect will hopefully ensure that we get our applications approved with no issues. And then finally, the last risk is the dependence on New Jersey Transit to complete our installations for the Port Jervis line. Metro North has met with their executive management. They have requested a proposal that will support the implementation of civil speed enforcement and also a procurement strategy to expedite the delivery of PTC equipment so that Metro North can get their installations done quicker. The last two slides are a narrative on the timeline, the project timeline and a look ahead. They provide by month project milestones through the end of the year. I'm not going to go through the list, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. This list will be updated and should give you an indication every month whether we're on schedule. So right now, we already have completed our office FAT, and Metro North is on its way to completing civil speed enforcement on the east of Hudson. That concludes my report. If anyone has any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, just two questions. One, what happens if we don't comply by the end of the year?
Well, there's two things. We are targeting completion at the end of 2018 to get all lines in PTC operations, but to not get fined by the FRA, you have to be in PTC compliance, which is the 4 circles that I showed on the slide. So we need to have, and we're pretty confident we're going to make that. We just have to get our pilot lines in revenue service demonstration. And as you could see, based on the completion thus far, that should be no issue.
And do you have a sense of where we are in terms of progress compared to other systems that are also required?
I think
to
we're
comply?
all in the same struggle, challenges of trying to get our projects done. Frankly, I do, the only person I work with is Metro North. I do look at the status of other railroads. I mean, there are some that are less complete than we are, and they've already told the FRA that they're not going to make it. They need more time. And clearly there are several that are already done. But they still have requirements. For instance, I think Amtrak and SEPTA, who are PTC on their property, they also still have to complete the interoperability requirements. So they're almost there. They've indicated that they'll be done before 2018.
Thank you.
Debbie, you mentioned that PTC is a layering approach. If Spite and Dival happened again, could it happen again given the civil enforcement that we have?
We've already instituted measures to prevent something like that from happening. So that would not happen. The situation in Seattle would not happen. The situation that recently happened in the Maryland area, that would not happen. You know, from the misaligned switch.
Right, down in the Carolinas.
Yeah, Carolina.
Right.
So there are many instances where our existing signaling system, which we will call our existing PTC system, already protects against those kind of situations.
If, God forbid, one of our trains hitting into another one of our trains, what?
There's still under PTC, the regulations, you can still have a low-speed collision under 15 miles an hour. But you will not get a situation where someone's going too fast and tries to slam on the brakes and slides past the red signal. The way the system is designed, it knows the weight of the train, it knows what kind of train it is, it applies the brakes accordingly to make sure that the train stops in advance of the interlocking red signal.
Is that what we have today?
No, that's what we will have.
That's what we will have.
Right.
Okay. So what we have today, though, to prevent the speeding that happened in Spite and Dival, how does that work?
As far as the
civil speed enforcement.
There were many implementations. I know we upgraded the cab signaling system. We also made some modifications to the train to ensure that wouldn't occur. Oh, okay, Glenn.
So Metro North has identified, as Debbie said, curves and bridges where we could have exceeded the overspeed derailment, and in each of those we have enforced a maximum cab signal speed. In this case of Spuyten Duyvil, the most any train can get is a medium cab, which is 30 miles an hour, no matter what.
And it automatically, regardless of what happens with the engineer?
That's correct.
It automatically happens, whether...
If the engineer does not comply, the brakes come on.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Andrew.
So, but PTC wouldn't have prevented an accident like happened to the chartered Amtrak train the congressional Republicans were taking, where CSX rerouted a train to a track where there was already a freight train sitting. It wouldn't prevent anything like that.
It doesn't have any, it can't stop if a train is sitting on the tracks.
Okay.
It can if you have a malfunctioning grade crossing, it's reported, and a dispatcher places a temporary speed restriction to enforce the stopping of the train in advance of that affected grade crossing. But otherwise, it wouldn't know that that train is there.
Nabil? Norman?
Yeah, I just want to, I believe, Andrew, that you had them confused that the congressional train was a dump truck on the tracks. Yeah, it was the other one was the CSX. CSX fouled the track.
Okay, good afternoon.
One question before.
Hold on 1 second, Nabil.
On the Waterbury branch, is Metro North the applicant for the extension of time, or is the state of Connecticut the applicant for the extension of time?
We are, Metro North is.
Because?
We asked for, because we're putting a signaling system up there. So once the signaling system is incorporated at the same time as we incorporate the signaling system, PTC will be incorporated at the same time.
So the intent is to do two things at the same time rather than one after the other?
Correct.
And the signal system itself cannot meet the December 31st, 18 date?
No. Right now, the signaling system is scheduled to be finished by August of 2020, and the PTC will also be completed approximately at the same time.
Did the state of Connecticut support the extension?
Yes, they have.
In writing?
Just to clarify, since we're the operating railroad, we're the ones that put in the implementation plan for the New Haven line, the Danbury, New Canaan, and Waterbury. And the decision on the Waterbury was a joint decision, and they supported it because they're funding it. So
okay,
yes.
As I said, I don't want Connecticut to come back and say, Metro North, you did something that we didn't want you to do, which they have a habit of doing sometimes. Okay.
Well, they funded it, but even still.
And just to be clear, we had a main track exemption for the Waterbury, which was you didn't need essentially PTC in perpetuity. In conjunction with the state of Connecticut, we got together and said, look, we'd like to install cab signals. It's our only manual block, and put in full PTC. And they accepted that and gave us until the end of 2020 to do all that work already.
Nabil, it's all yours.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Nabil Ghali, and I will be presenting the IEC's report on the PTC project. With respect to project budget, no change in the budget since it was last reported to the board in October. However, as indicated by Debbie, the Long Island Railroad identified the need for $40 million to cover third-party services and force account resources. With respect to project schedule, the railroads are forecasting that by December 2018, all lines will be in revenue service demonstration. Since our last report to the board in October, the final design review milestone slipped from December 2017 to March 2018. To mitigate this delay, the railroads are focusing on addressing priority items that could potentially impact software development. Also, the system integrator progressed the factory acceptance testing activities for the office software for both Long Island Railroad and Metro North, However, a number of test variances were identified and need to be addressed. In order to mitigate any impacts on the testing schedule, the railroads analyzed the results of Office Core requirements and determined that these results warrant progressing to the next phase of testing with focus on the core requirements. The plan is for the variances will be corrected and tested in the second FAT iteration. In the opinion of the IEC, achieving the December 2018 date remains challenging, as the time allocated to remaining activities has been further compressed. Also, the current schedule is highly dependent on the system integrator's ability to successfully complete the system integrated testing while resolving the identified test variances. The IEC has the following observations related to critical project activities. The recent results of the factory acceptance testing continue to point to the need for improvement in requirement traceability, test readiness review, test case coverage, and related documents. The system integrator completed the field database verification for the pilot lines. As indicated by Debbie, more work is needed to verify the field data for the remaining line segments. The system integrator also delayed the start of formal pilot testing from February to March 2018. In order to mitigate further delays, the project team is currently conducting preliminary testing on the pilot lines to demonstrate a number of PTC functions, as well as to gain confidence in system design and performance. To achieve completion by December 2018, multiple revenue service demonstrations are planned for non-pilot lines within a short period of time. The IEC is of the opinion that this would be challenging to achieve due to the magnitude of work to be done and potential constraints on resources and track access. Based on our observation, we identified a number of project risks. For the most part, these risks are the same risks presented by Debbie and are being addressed by the project team. First, with respect to schedule risks, the critical path leading to revenue service demonstrations is through system integration, pre-FAT and FAT activities, and site performance testing on the pilot lines. In the opinion of the IEC, there is limited time available in the schedule to finalize FAT activities for subsystems that have unresolved open items, as well as to address test variances associated with non-core requirements. The IEC is of the opinion that resolving all functional test variances is necessary to ensure the integrity of the PTC system. The project team is addressing this risk and plans to mitigate or complete the variances concurrently with integrated system testing. Another challenge facing the project is the need to progress multiple system development and testing activities in parallel to support both railroads. This is stretching the resources at both the system integrator and the railroads. The lack of sufficient experienced technical resources is adding risk to the schedule. As I indicated earlier, the project team is focusing on the PTC core functions. While this strategy enables the testing to progress, the IEC is of the opinion that additional test coverage is necessary in areas related to human factors, reliability, availability, and maintainability, stress performance, and failover management. Another risk is related to the limitations of the integrated system factory testing environment. As a result of these limitations, certain test cases need to be performed during field testing. This could delay the detection and mitigation of potential variances. Finally, the schedule has limited time available for the development of the roadway worker protection system, which is required for the Long Island Railroad. The Long Island Railroad made progress in demonstrating this function. However, a delay in completing the development of the RWPS could have an impact on the schedule for the pilot line. Having presented project risks, I would like to mention that the IEC is encouraged that the project team is proactively addressing these risks and is making every effort to meet project challenges. This concludes the IEC presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Nabil. Now we're going to move forward to the Bridge and Tunnel Progress Report on its capital program. Joe Keene. Joe, if you could, it's all good news. If you can condense it, that would be great. And if anybody can find the HVAC guy, tell him to turn it up, down a little bit. Or provide oxygen into the room.
Okay. Welcome to Bridges and Tunnels Annual Capital Update. In today's presentation, I'll provide an update on our overall program status as well as facility-specific updates on our programs at the tunnels, the Verrazano, and the RFK bridges. I'll also introduce a program update at the Henry Hudson Bridge, where we're embarking on 2 transformative projects. And finally, I'll conclude with a review of our successful implementation of open road tolling. First, an overview of our progress at a program level. We have committed 99% of planned Sandy and 1014 capital program projects, and we're approaching 40% with the commitments of the 15 to 19 capital commitments. Remaining commitments in that program are planned over the next 2 years. Looking at yearly commitments in 2017, we planned 113 commitments valued at $528 million. We exceeded the plan by 28% with 192 commitments made at $676 million. The majority of the unplanned commitments are related to implementation of open road tolling. In 2018, we plan to make 100 commitments valued at $809 million, including 7 design-build projects. As for completions, approximately 59% of the 1014 capital program is now complete, and by the end of the year, we expect that number to be 88%. Overall, on completed projects, we're averaging approximately 5% cost growth, and the significant majority of the projects are completed on or ahead of schedule. Looking at past year's performance in 2017, we planned 10 completions at $519 million. We exceeded the plan with 22 completions totaling $833 million. In 2018, we plan to complete an additional $1.42 billion. As far as design-build projects are concerned, since 2010, we've completed 5 design-build projects totaling $126 million in value with an average cost growth of 1%, with all projects completed on schedule. We currently have 6 ongoing design builds and another 10 planned in the remaining 2 years of the current program. All told, design-build comprises about 24% of our program. This slide looks at how we're doing on small business mentoring programs, Tier 1 and 2, as well as the discretionary program for architect engineering firms. Overall, we're exceeding goals for the programs, and we've awarded 11 discretionary A&E tasks, most of which are related to SBMP projects. Well, next, I'll give an update on the Sandy restoration program at the tunnels. Tunnel restoration projects integrate Sandy restoration work, capital improvements, and work on our plazas and consolidated projects in order to minimize impacts to our customers. In addition, flood mitigation measures are being installed and fully coordinated with these projects. The restoration of the Hugh Carey Tunnel was awarded in December of 2014, has a current budget of $328 million and an accelerated duration of 39 months. The project is on schedule for completion actually next month in March. Work on the tunnel includes complete reconstruction of interior, replacement of sandy damaged systems and associated components, and reconstruction of the Brooklyn Plaza, all integrated to minimize impacts to the traveling public. While tunnel restoration work was ongoing, the Morris Street pedestrian bridge, which crosses the Hugh Carey Manhattan Plaza, was reconstructed. Construction began in August of 2017. The bridge was reopened to pedestrians in December. The new bridge adds ADA accessibility and has a free span over the plaza, eliminating intermediate columns that supported the old bridge, greatly improving operational flexibility. Similar to the Hugh Carey Tunnel, restoration work is ongoing at the Queens Midtown Tunnel. Project was awarded in April of 2015, has a current budget of $281 million and an accelerated duration of 39 months. The North Tube and Plaza reconstruction were complete by July of 2017, and we're currently on schedule for overall completion in July of 2018. Work on the tunnel includes complete reconstruction of tunnel interiors, replacement of sandy damaged elements, and reconstruction of the Manhattan Plaza, all integrated to minimize impacts. In addition to restoring the tunnels, B&T is also installing flood mitigation measures at both tunnels and at the Governor's Island Ventilation Building to prevent damage from future storms. In 2016, a $64 million design-build project, largely funded by FEMA, was awarded for the installation of floodgates and perimeter protection at both tunnels and to raise the seawalls at the Governor's Island Vent Building. To date, all the flood doors are installed and the design is complete for remaining work. Overall, the project is 60% complete and on schedule for completion later this year. We'll now show a short video of the project.
Roughly 125,000 vehicles per day use the Queens Midtown Tunnel and the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel to travel in and out of Manhattan. As such, they are critical links for the region's infrastructure. Up until 2012, these two tunnels never flooded. That all changed on Monday, October 29, 2012, when Superstorm Sandy hit New York. A record-setting storm surge of 9 feet caused floodwaters to inundate the Manhattan Plaza of the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel and the Queens Plaza of the Queens Midtown Tunnel. The HLCT was filled with about 60 million gallons of salt water, while the QMT was filled with about 12 million gallons. It took weeks of pumping to get all the water out. The damage from Sandy to the tunnels was significant, with critical tunnel components impacted. TBTA awarded 2 contracts to repair the damage and restore the tunnels to a state of good repair. We are now approaching completion on these 2 contracts with a combined value in excess of $500 million. To protect from similar catastrophic flooding in the future, TBTA awarded a $64 million design-build contract called TUN Mid-01, largely funded by FEMA, to design and construct the flood protection scheme for the 2 tunnels and the Governor's Island Vent Building of the HLCT. All TUN Mid-01 work is designed to protect to the FEMA 500-year flood elevation, which is nearly 4 feet higher than Sandy's peak flood levels. To protect the tunnel plazas from flooding, the design provides 2 lines of defense using a belt and suspenders approach. The first line of defense will be a protected perimeter using the existing tunnel plazas together with deployable barriers to form a perimeter bathtub wall to hold back floodwaters. The second line of defense will be at the tunnel portals, where massive steel doors can be swung into position to totally seal off the tunnel and protect the interiors from floodwaters. We will also raise the seawall at the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel's Governor's Island Ventilation Building, as that came close to flooding during Sandy and is an area of concern.
The design and the installation of the new flood doors was a major undertaking, as they are unique, one-of-a-kind items which take into account several factors, including constructability, speed of deployment, and certainty of flood protection. The 8 flood doors, 4 each for the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel and 4 for the Queens Midtown Tunnel, were manufactured in Virginia by Wolfville Fabricators. While the doors were being fabricated, the contractor modified the tunnel portals by removing existing granite facing and installing the large concrete and steel frames that the doors will hang from. To minimize impact to the public, delivery and installation of each flood door was performed over a weekend concurrent with tunnel closures in place for tunnel reconstruction work. Given that each flood door weighs approximately 50,000 pounds, trucking the doors to the work site and lifting it into position was a significant undertaking requiring the use of a 110-ton crane. Contract Tunmit 01 required all 8 portal floodgates to be installed within 12 months of the notice to proceed. With the 8 portal floodgate installed on December 9, 2017, this requirement was met.
There's still plenty to do on the project, including raising the seawall at the Governor's Island Ventilation Building. But already we're in much better shape with regard to protection from flooding from hurricanes and other storms. Currently, Tunmit 01 is on schedule for substantial completion by December 31st, 2018, and is proceeding within budget.
Next, I'd like to give an update on the program at the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge. Shown in blue on the slide are 2 significant projects which are now complete. The $248 million replacement of the upper-level suspended span deck and its reconfiguration to provide a 7th lane reversible bus HOV lane on the upper level, and a $91 million construction of a new bus HOV ramp on the Brooklyn side of the bridge, providing direct access to the new upper-level HOV lane. These 2 projects were the final part of a coordinated series of initiatives between MTA B&T and New York State DOT to create a continuous bus HOV lane from Staten Island to Manhattan. With the use of incentives, both projects were completed ahead of schedule, allowing bus HOV lane on the Verrazano to be open almost a year ahead of plan in coordination with implementation of open road tolling. This continuous bus HOV lane from Staten Island to Manhattan has enhanced regional mobility, improved access for express buses and HOV3 vehicles, and reduced travel time, significantly benefiting mass transit and thousands of daily express bus passengers. We'll now show a short video of the bus HOV lane from a customer perspective. Next, I would like to discuss the RFK program. Sure.
Question. Nothing makes me happier than seeing buses given, well, lots of things make me happy, but I'm really, really happy when buses are given priority on our roadways, on our bridges, and our tunnels. Do you have a sense of how many buses, and I don't know if I missed that number in the presentation, but how many buses are using that lane? One of my favorite stats and Ronnie, you can appreciate this, is the exclusive bus lane transports like 1,800, buses, I think, every hour, is it? Or during that 3 hour, during the peak? Do we have a sense of how many buses are actually utilizing that HOV lane?
Yes. Altogether, yeah. Okay.
There was a number of
Yeah, I have them. There's about 1,500 a day in the peak period, yeah. Okay. Next, I'd like to discuss the RFK program. Since 1992, the RFK Bridge has been undergoing significant reconstruction with over $1 billion invested to date. Approximately 68% of original roadway decks by area have been replaced, and with the completion of investments in the current program, this will increase to about 76%. While we have made significant progress, almost 25% of facility decks remain to be addressed in upcoming programs. Highlighted in bright green are the on and off ramps from RFK to the Manhattan, which were completed in October 2017, which I'll discuss. Highlighted in blue, one of the remaining 1930s era portions of the facility currently under construction. This is the Bronx elevated structure. Construction on the Bruckner approach ramps and footings for a future direct connector ramp to the Harlem River Drive are being implemented via interagency agreements with both New York State and New York City DOT. And these are examples of strategy of working with our transportation partners to make joint improvements in key corridors to the benefit of the entire region while minimizing impacts to customers. Highlighted in yellow is a new Harlem River Drive direct connector ramp that will be constructed later in this program, as well as the FDR ramps where we are currently undergoing interim repairs to extend the service life of this ramp. First, I'd like to discuss a major completion, which was the reconstruction of the on and off-bound ramps from RFK to Manhattan. This $68 million project was completed 2 months ahead of schedule and within budget. Customer impacts were minimized by the use of a temporary bridge for off-bound ramp traffic. One of the key features of the project is the construction of a tie-in stub for the future Harlem River Drive connector ramp, which I'll discuss in the next slide. Phase 3, shown in yellow, is the future design-build project to construct a connector ramp from the RFK to the Harlem River Drive. This project is planned for award in 2019 once the ongoing allowed traffic to directly access the Harlem River Drive from the RFK, avoiding local city streets, which will benefit our customers and the local community in East Harlem. This slide shows the ongoing reconstruction of the Bronx Plaza deck and supporting structure. The scope of this project was realigned to facilitate implementation of open road tolling, including elimination of tolling infrastructure and the installation of open road tolling infrastructure on the Queens and Bronx approaches. Deck replacement was modified to account for a reduced structure width that, along with other changes to construction staging, resulted in significant schedule savings. It is anticipated the project will be completed on budget and ahead of schedule later this year. Next, I'd like to introduce a Henry Hudson facility where we've begun construction on 2 transformative projects. Shown here is an ongoing project to reconstruct the concrete substructures off the bridge, including the skewbacks and the pedestals, which are shown in red. The project is a prime example of successful implementation of design-build. The concrete skewbacks, which are large blocks of concrete that support the steel arch, and concrete pedestals shown in red need to be reconstructed to maintain the facility in a state of good repair. While the pedestals can be replaced, the skewbacks cannot, and therefore innovation was necessary to determine an optimal rehabilitation scheme. To take advantage of contractor innovation, the authority issued a design-build RFP to address rehab of the skewbacks and pedestals and extend the life of the bridge. The design-build project was awarded in May for $82 million with a duration of 33 months and is in the early stages of construction. Construction is below the roadway and traffic impacts are expected to be minimal. Next slide shows the stage reconstruction of the upper and lower plaza decks and the southbound approach of the Henry Hudson Bridge. This will replace one of the last pieces of the 1930s era Henry Hudson Bridge construction and eliminate the support columns that currently reduce sight lines for traffic traveling on the lower level. The reconstruction of plaza decks is facilitated by the successful implementation of open road tolling and the relocation of utilities that were done in prior phases of the project. The project was awarded in April of 2017 for $86 million with a 19-month period of lane closure impacts and is currently in the early stage of construction. 2 lanes of traffic matching 2 lanes on the Henry Hudson Parkway north of the bridge will be maintained in each direction to minimize impacts to the public. The contract also includes significant incentives to minimize the period of construction impacts. Now I'd like to conclude with a brief review of the update of the open road tolling implementation that was done facility-wide in 2017. Implementation of open road tolling at our 7 bridges and 2 tunnels completely transformed the existing plazas, as you can see from the before and after pictures of the RFK Manhattan Plaza. Work entailed removal of old toll plaza infrastructure, including toll booths, canopies, islands, related HVAC electrical systems, and gated tolling equipment, and the construction of monotube gantries to support new open road tolling equipment. We also installed new concrete pavements within the tolling zone, modified vertical and horizontal alignments for higher speed, and channelized traffic for the open road tolling environment. All of this work was seamlessly integrated with our ongoing largest ever capital program. For efficiency and speed, we used an integrated program delivery method, allowing us to leverage existing competitively procured contracts at each facility using contractors that were already mobilized at these sites. This maximized coordination with ongoing reconstruction work and helped minimize customer impacts. We employed aspects of design build to ensure full engagement of all the stakeholders and to ensure project success. The last 2 facilities, which were the Bronx Whitestone and Throgs Neck Bridge, were brought online in September of 2017, 3 months ahead of the planned overall completion date of December 2017. Remaining work focuses on completing plaza modernization and site improvements. B&T budgeted $501 million in the current program. For ORT, to date, we've obligated $343 million, and we expect to complete the program within budget. As you can see, there are multiple benefits from ORT program, not least of which is a $650 million capital cost avoidance over the next 20 years by not having to rebuild traditional toll plazas. We'll wrap up the presentation with a short time-lapse video of the RFK Plaza transformation under open road tolling.
Joe, thank you very much. Any questions, Joe, before we move on? Thank you very much. The independent engineers.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Calvin Gordon. I'm presenting the IC's project review for both the Hugh Carey Tunnel and the Queens Midtown Tunnel restoration projects. Looking at the schedule and budget review for Hugh Carey Tunnel, as the agency stated, the project is projected on schedule for March 2018 substantial completion. With approximately a month left, IC is in the opinion that while this is aggressive, it is achievable with the contractor sustaining a high level of effort. With regards to the budget, IC concurs that the project remains on budget. Looking at the observations with regard to commissioning activities, There was a longer learning curve than originally anticipated for site acceptance activities. This was partially due to performing some commissioned activities in both tubes as opposed to completing all testing in one tube, thereby not taking advantage of lessons learned. The ICC's system integration testing is a key topic, and as the schedule is compressed and is anticipating a review of the integration plan activities for future comments. Another observation is a substantial completion date is in the freeze-thaw cycle, and with the current extreme weather conditions that are experienced, it may present a challenge for all weather-sensitive work such as grouting, paving, etc. Additionally, the delivery and training of O&M materials appear to be lagging by the contractor. While this will not hold up substantial completion, however, it needs to be addressed well in advance of the project closeout. Finally, the IEC recognizes the importance that senior level management involvement has been to positively impacting the achievement of milestones and goals in this project. Meeting with contractor senior management periodically and keeping track of the accountability for the project's success is evident and has demonstrated success. Moving to the Queens Midtown Tunnel Review, as far as the schedule, the contractor is forecasting to meet the planned substantial completion date. The IEC concurs that this is achievable with current levels of efforts maintained. With regards to the budget, the IEC concurs that the project is within budget as indicated by the project team. Finally, our observations. The IEC has the following observations. Although the QMT has more time to complete the freeze-thaw cycle, the current weather conditions, again, have been challenging, and what mitigations is for such as grouting and paving again. Finally, again, we just want to reiterate the level of effort that the senior management team has done for both tunnels, and as well as QMT. They also express a lot of effort. They have the bridge and tunnel team. They make it look easy, and we just want to recognize that their efforts have been extraordinary in keeping both these projects on schedule. That concludes our review for the Queens Midtown and Hugh Carey Tunnel projects. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, there being none, then off to the VZ and RFK bridges. Mark?
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Cosmetti, and I monitor the bridge program for B&T. As the agency stated and as forecast last February's CPOC, the project was declared substantially complete in May 2017, 6 months ahead of schedule. Open road tolling was implemented at the facility in July. The ORT work had little impact on the VN80B base work. Permanent lane closure work, which was scheduled for 36 months, was completed approximately 13 months early, reducing the impact to the traveling public. Project was completed within the original budget. This will be the final IEC CPOC report on Project VN80B. On the RFK RK65A project, the IEC agrees with the agency's assessment that the project is currently ahead of the original baseline schedule. The following potential schedule impacts were mitigated. The implementation of open road tolling resulted in a reduction of scope for work no longer needed, and the number of work stages was reduced, saving time and money. The contractor was given a contract modification to accelerate the project to complete all permanent lane closure work by the end of this summer, which is several months earlier than the baseline schedule. Work on the mainline bridge was halted for 2 months during the emergency work at Penn Station. Project team was able to mitigate the 2 months. Permanent lane closure work is still scheduled to be completed within the accelerated schedule. Project is currently within budget. As mentioned, open road tolling resulted in a savings for work no longer required. This last slide lists 3 of the risks that are remaining. These risks are significantly, the probability has been significantly reduced. The second 2, they're currently in the final stage of major deck work, and these last 2 risks are mostly dealing with that stage of work, so pretty soon they will be retired also. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay. Now we're off to the update on the Minority the Minority and Women and Disadvantaged Business Participation Program. Name? Mike and Naeem. Is Mike here? Yeah, Mike. Okay. We're quickly losing oxygen in this room, so.
Mr. Chairman, how are you? Members of CPOC, Naeem Din is going to give you an update on our MW DBE goals and results on both our state-funded projects and our FTA-funded projects. Let me just start out by giving you a update on our small business mentoring program. And I want to personally thank LIRR and B&T for their leadership. They are the only two agencies thus far that are either exceeding or achieving the goal. I will be circling back around with Don Spiro and meeting with each operating agency president to make sure that we are on target for this year. There's 145 million for this year as the goal. We have identified 115.3 million. The danger is that the agencies has only awarded 21 million thus far. We have 5 months to go. And the danger is going to be is to whether or not the agencies can actually award all these projects in this program year and not have any slippage into next year. And we have a danger of the pricing going up. Because when you have firms who are going to be bidding on the projects here at the Small Business Mentoring Program, here at the MTA and at the SCA, there's only a small, finite amount of firms, and it's going to get to the point where they're going to pick and choose, and the pricing is going to increase. And so, in moving forward, I will be meeting with each one of those operating agency presidents to try to get this back on track. Thank you.
Thank you. As Mike said, for the construction projects for the calendar year 2017, for the federally funded projects, $1 billion was awarded, with the participation by disadvantaged business enterprises of $162 million, which is 16%. For most of this time period, our overall DBE goal was 17%. However, with the start of the new federal fiscal year on October 1st, that goal slightly increased to 18%. For the non-federal or state-funded contracts, the total award amount was $712 million. Of that amount, $92 million was awarded to minority-owned businesses, which is 13%. And an additional $70 million, or 10%, was awarded to women-owned businesses. So the total MWB participation is of 23%. The overall goal during this time period for the MWB participation was 30%. We also have a goal for participation by the service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. In our projects, that goal is 6%. However, for the time period, there wasn't any SD, VOB, or service-disabled veteran-owned business participation in these contracts. And that concludes my report.
Any questions? Yes.
Obviously, the numbers of actual are below the numbers of goals. Is there a specific reason or reasons why we did not achieve the anticipated goals?
So on the on the state-funded projects, the the Small Business Mentoring Program is an aggressive driver towards the awards and also towards the payments. For the past 2 years, we have not reached our goals in the program because the first year was the lack of an approved 5-year capital plan. Last year we didn't meet it because of various reasons. So Ronnie sent out a correspondence to all the agency presidents asking them to appoint a person on this working committee in which we are meeting once a month and empower that person to make sure that our goals in this program is going to be aligned. I'm a true believer that if we reach 145.9 million this year, you will start to see a trend. Let me give you some context. When we first started this journey about 9 years ago, there were $116 million in payments to state-certified firms, which was 6%. Last year, that number increased to $387 million at 23%. For the first 9 months of this year, we are already at $470 million. So for the first time in the history of this organization, in 1 year, as far as payments are concerned, we are going to reach about $700 million, which is we are now ranked the #1 state agency in the state out of 96 as far as payments made to state-certified firms. We will fix the small business mentoring program. You will start to see goals being met and goals being achieved.
I'm just hopeful because I know that there are significant goals in the Long Island Railroad third track project, and we would all hope that we could meet those goals. I'm just hopeful, I'm concerned that the lack of meeting these goals will lead to the lack of meeting those goals, and that is a concern.
So thus far, both in the 33 station initiative and the third track, the third-party contractors have submitted goal plans which they are indicating that they are going to achieve those goals. My staff monitor these goals month by month, and when we see when we see goals slipping, we then bring in the contractor and the agency and ask for an action plan. And so we are monitoring these projects because we want to ensure that the goals assigned are going to be the goals that's going to be achieved.
If you could keep, listen, from my perspective, obviously I'm interested in the third track project.
Yes.
It's the most important project on Long Island. I want to make sure that we meet the goals that we have set out.
Yes.
Otherwise, there's no point in setting goals.
Right.
So if you could keep us informed on some kind of quarterly or basis, either at the committee meeting or here, to let us know where we are, because those contracts are starting to be done. That project is starting to move forward, as we heard a report earlier this morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to just make sure we don't get behind at the beginning.
Got it. It's done.
Thank you.
Done.
There being no further questions, we'll move on to commitments and completions.
Thank you. Thank you. The 2018 commitments and completions plans are start on page 68 of your book. I will simply note that in 2018, both on commitments and completions, we have very ambitious targets, and so I've asked the agency presidents to monitor these completions and commitments carefully, and as you know, we'll be coming back with our progress throughout the year. In terms of the January 18 highlights that are set forth on page 71 and thereafter, I will note that there were 0 commitments scheduled for January and 0 completions scheduled for January. So by year end, we forecast meeting all of our goals as set forth. The end of my report, sir.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Thank you. The Diversity Committee is about to begin.